Let's get to the phones right now. We have Professor Alex Del Carmen. He's a criminologist with Tarleton State. He's joining us now. We've spoken to Professor Del Carmen many times whenever these types of situations arise, and we need a little expert insight into what is happening there. So, Professor Del Carmen, thank you very much for joining us. This is Ken, by the way. Wanted to ask you, when you see sort of the response and how organized everything has been so far, what do you make of a situation like this and the fact that there's this kind of law enforcement response to it all?
Good afternoon, and it's good to watch you again. Look, I think that this is absolutely a textbook response in terms of law enforcement. What you have here is a coordinated response by at least 3 to 4 police agencies. They know exactly what they're doing. They're going through the scene right now, left to right, up and down, to make sure that there are no details that are left uncovered, interviewing witnesses, and actually pursuing the suspect at this point, I assume, very aggressively throughout the area and perhaps even the state.
What do you think the message here is for parents if you had a kid in there? And I ask this because, you know, the images are stressful, right? It's hard to ignore what this all looks like. But I'm sure you want people to know, like you said, this is a textbook response. And it seems and it sounds, by all accounts, Dr. Del Carmen, that these kids are in the best hands possible right now.
There's no question. I happen to work with some of the agencies that are now in charge of this operation, and I can tell you, you have the best of the best. And not only that, that you also have an immediate response to secure the scene, remove the victims to a local hospital, and then also secure those bystanders that were there at the school. So you know, I think in the law enforcement industry, having been a criminologist for 24 years, I can tell you that this video should be watched and rewatched in future generations as to what exactly should be done. Now, the true success of the operation will come once the individual suspect has been apprehended and taken into custody. I think until then, parents as well as local residents are going to be very nervous as to, you know, what the next steps are going to be and what the next few hours are going to look like.
Yeah, so speak to that. Speak about the ongoing search for that suspect. Now that we know that that suspect is at large and that we have a photograph as well as an age and a name for that suspect, what is the police goal right now as far as catching that suspect? How are they going to be combing the area?
Yeah, so what's likely happening at this point is you first of all, you have the FBI and ATF involved, which means that there is a presumption that they're going to be looking perhaps across state lines to see if this individual is fleeing to those areas. The local law enforcement right now is likely trying to get search warrants to be able to go through that home and look for any type of information that may lead the investigators to know where this individual would likely go. They're likely going to be talking to witnesses, people that knew him or that know him, to see if he's got a favorite hangout place or places that he would be familiar with, or places where he could hide, right? So all of that information is being generated in real time, and investigators are looking at that and passing that information to officers in the field so that they're aware of it and they know where to look.
Another piece that we're going to be following is what the ATF said they're going to be doing, which is going to be tracking down where that weapon came from. In situations like this, how do they even go about that?
Well, you know, what they're likely going to do is with that search warrant, once they're able to go inside this individual's home, they're going to find out if perhaps he took the gun illegally or without any permission from parents or any adults that may be in the home. If not, then they're going to try to figure out, you know, the caliber that was shot from and what angle it was shot from, if there's any video of it. And once they recover the information, if it's a legally purchased gun, that they're able to trace it back to that particular residence, it won't be hard to know where the gun comes from. But obviously the question mark here at this point is, was it legitimately obtained or was it obtained through someone else that this individual may have known?
You know, and those are big questions, big question marks, Dr. Del Carmen. But, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are asking. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at this young man's face. He's 18. He's inside of a high school. The big question, I think, is also going to be, how did that gun get in there? Why was it in there in the first place? What possible scenarios do you think police will consider when they try to navigate those questions and come up for some kind of explanation? Because, again, you know, this is a gun inside of a school that was fired.
Right, and this is going to pose, I think, Ken, some bigger questions at the end of this episode, which are going to relate to the fact of, how are kids bringing guns to school? How do they have access to them? Could there have been a better protocol in that school in order to identify the gun from coming in? Were there other people in the school that perhaps were armed and did not display or use a weapon, right? So all of those questions will be posed, and I promise you that not only Mansfield, but also Arlington and various other ISDs in the Metroplex are right now scratching their heads trying to figure out if they're going to be next, if they don't put up a protocol that's going to allow for us to be able to detect those weapons before they enter the school.
We're seeing a live picture right now of ATF agents as well as FBI agents out there on the scene at the school. And just remind us one more time in something like this what the role of federal law enforcement is in something like this. Is this just protocol now to have them there?
Not really. I mean, it is protocol in the sense that the FBI is typically involved in school shootings as well as ATF, obviously, since it involved a gun. But I will tell you that they have capabilities as federal entities that local law enforcement does not. They can mobilize crime scene experts that are individualized and specialized in various particular areas that local law enforcement may not have. And they also have the capability of alerting other law enforcement entities outside the state and bringing in those federal resources that are needed. So all of that is probably coming into play right now. And it's just great to see in the midst of this calamity, it is great to see local and federal and state law enforcement working together in a matter of minutes to try to apprehend a suspect that at this point has caused a lot of pain in people's hearts.
Professor Del Carmen, we've got one more question for you. So we have learned from authorities that there were 2 Mansfield ISD police officers inside that building that were able to immediately respond to that shooting threat. How did they likely respond to that scene, and what was that engagement like with that classroom that it occurred in?
Yeah, so at this point, we don't have the details of what that looked like, but I can tell you that if they responded according to training, they likely were able to save people's lives by virtue of being there and having a very, very short response to the threat, right? So we have to assume that this individual was the bad guy, the suspect was a student, and we assume that the suspect knew that there were police officers on site. So all of that goes into the mechanics as to how quickly the suspect left the scene and whether or not he tried to hurt other people. So just the mere presence of law enforcement likely had some sort of an effect that we're later going to find out once the story unravels.
Professor Del Carmen, we cannot thank you enough for your insight. Obviously, you are a friend to CBS11 and offer your thoughts and this information in tragic events like this. So thank you very much once again for joining us.